So the mid-season finales of all of our shows have aired, and I'm here to talk about them. And all of them are going on their mid-season break, and they will be back on January 15th, starting with Supergirl. And there is a chance Legends of Tomorrow will be moved to a new time slot. We will have to wait and see what happens with that. And the CW's new DC TV show, Black Lightning, will be premiering around the same time as our show's coming back. I will not be reviewing it as of now. It's not part of the Arrowverse. However, Supergirl and Constantine were not originally part of the Arrowverse, so there is a chance Black Lightning will be brought into it as well. I will be watching at least the first episodes, and if I like it, I will review it in a separate video. But let's talk about this week's Supergirl. So this week's episode of Supergirl is titled Rain. And in it, we see Kara dealing with Mon-El being back and with someone else. We also see James and Lena going up against Morgan Edge while they start to fall in love. More on that later. We also see Samantha become Rain as she marks City with the Kryptonian Mark of the Beast. And we also see Supergirl fight Rain for the first time. So let's go over all of that, starting with the James and Lena stuff. So I was not a fan of this part. I like seeing Morgan Edge again. It looks like he will play a similar role to what Maxwell Lord did in the first season, where they don't like him, but they end up needing his help to stop the villain. And as for James and Lena, I think the writers are just trying to give James something to do. He has not done anything important since Season 1. Yeah, he became Guardian in Season 2, but that was mostly there to give him and Wynn something to do. So rather than having him do something interesting, they just give him a love interest. Machad Brooks, I believe that's how you pronounce it, and Katie McGrath have no chemistry whatsoever. And there's a scene at Kara's Christmas party where Kara sees Lena looking at James and she says, "I've noticed some chemistry between you two. I wonder what show Kara's been watching." Certainly not Supergirl. The only interactions between these two characters we have really seen was them arguing over something, and not in a, "oh, look how cute they are, they're gonna fall in love someday" type of arguing, but in a "shut up and do your job or you're fired" type of arguing. Also, Katie McGrath is still going in and out of her British accent. Honestly, at this point, I really don't care. She's been doing it all season. She wasn't doing it last season, but I don't understand why the directors aren't cracking down on this and, telling her to stick with her accent. And also, I think they should kill off James because he is hands down my least favorite character in the show. Not only because he's a complete opposite to his comic book counterpart, but because he's the most bland, boring, and uninteresting character in almost the entire Arrowverse. And I would much rather have Lena focus on taking out Morgan Edge than be distracted by James. I think her character deserves better. Now let's talk about Kara and Mon-El. I thought it was not handled horribly, but it was very boring, predictable, and by the numbers. I really hope they turn the story around because right now it's one of the worst parts of the show. I like having Mon-El back, but they're just giving him stupid stuff to do, and I couldn't care less about him and Kara's relationship at this point. So to wrap this up, let's talk about Rain. So I said last week I was very disappointed with them just flipping a switch and she goes from Samantha to Rain, but it looks like we're stuck with that one. Anyway, we see Samantha blacking out, and then a symbol, which is a symbol of rain, appears all over National City. And we get the religious guy from the episode The Faithful again. I forget his name, but he tells Kara that rain predates modern Krypton. And that's why the hologram of Kara's mother does not know what the symbol means. And it is very similar to Savitar from The Flash Season 3, where we get a prophecy about what may happen this season. And the scene where Kara learns about the prophecy is even shot in a very similar way to when Savitar was speaking through Julian. But I thought the stuff with Rain was a high point of this episode. It was not great, but I still really enjoyed the fight between Kara and Rain. I have no idea how Kara did not know Samantha, but it is a superhero show, so I can forgive it. And also, since Rain is real, does that mean the Kryptonian religion is the true religion and every other religion is wrong? I don't know. But we also get our first look at Rain's costume, and the mask looks a little weird, but it's not noticeable like the rival scout from The Flash Season 3. And this episode ends on a cliffhanger, so we will have to wait until January to find out what happens. It seems like Ruby is what makes Rain switch back to Samantha, and hopefully Ruby meets a painful end because she's been nothing but annoying this season. So that'll do it for this week's episode of Supergirl. I talked about it for a bit longer than I usually do, but there was a lot to say. I enjoyed it. It was not great. It was just a decent episode. This season of Supergirl has been much better than the last two seasons, so let's hope that continues into the next half of the season. Now to talk about The Flash. This week's episode, The Flash, is titled Don't Run, and in it we see Barry get kidnapped by DeVoe after a very cool action scene, and we see Caitlin get kidnapped by Amunet because she needs her to perform a surgery on a meta with telepathic abilities. And also, Ralph is back and Wally's gone. Just wanted to throw that one in there because it really does not matter to the plot of this episode. And since Barry and Caitlin are both kidnapped, Iris has to decide which one to save. So let's start with Barry and DeVoe. I really enjoyed the interactions between these two characters. DeVoe has been such a great villain, and we get two really cool fight scenes between Barry and DeVoe. The first one is when Barry gets kidnapped, and the second one is when Barry is hanging on to DeVoe's chair as they fly through the city. Yeah, it sounds silly, but I'm really glad the Flash is not scared to have these really over-the-top action scenes. And as for Caitlin and Amunet, I also really enjoyed the interactions between these two characters. Caitlin even gets a pep talk from Amunet. My only problem is I'm still not sold on Amunet's character. Her powers are really weird. Does she have to carry that bucket around everywhere she goes? And also, her accent is a little too over the top, and it can just be kind of annoying, but she's getting better, and the meta's name is Dominic, and for a few scenes he was Dominic. I liked him. More on that later. It kind of looked like they were hinting that he would be Caitlin's new love interest, but if that's what they were planning, it explains what happens to him later in the episode. DeVoe takes over his body and plants his old body in Barry and Iris' apartment, and he gifted Barry and Iris a knife for their wedding, so Barry's fingerprints are on one of the knives. Now, I don't know if that's a knife they used to stab DeVoe's old body, because there's no blood on the knife, but I don't know. Maybe they'll just go with the fact that they'll say Barry cleaned the knife off or something like that. But Barry gets arrested, and in Season 1, when Barry travels back in time in the finale, we saw him in jail, and we are finally getting the payoff for that. It's gonna be awkward when Jay Garrick visits him in prison. Anyway, so that'll do it with The Flash. I really enjoyed this episode. Second best episode in the season so far. Just right behind Therefore I Am. This episode was really good, and this season of The Flash just keeps getting better and better. My only problem is I really like the other guy's DeVoe. It's gonna be weird having someone else playing him. Anyways, on to Legends. This week's episode of Legends is titled Beebo, the God of War. In it, we see the Legends go back in time to the past, I forget which year, but there's a level 12 anachronism, where a young Martin Stein was teleported to when a clan of Vikings were in North America, and they captured Stein in a Furby-like toy called Beebo that Stein had bought for Lily as a Hanukkah present. We also see Jax dealing with the loss of Stein and trying to figure out a way to tell the young version of Stein not to go to Earth X in 2017. So, if I had to describe this episode in one word, it would be ugh. There was so much wrong with it. Let's start with how they treated Stein's character. First of all, they use him as a plot device when he died just one episode ago. And to make it worse, they have that god-awful scene where Leo was using a puppet of Stein to help, I say that with heavy quotations, the Legends deal with grief. It was so disrespectful to have this just one episode after he died. And they are treating it like Stein was a character that only appeared only once or twice every season. It's not like he was one of the main characters for 2 whole seasons, and the first half of this season. And then you have the opening scene where young Martin Stein is at a mall and there's one last Beebo toy left, and he uses a toy arrow to shoot it down off a high shelf so he can grab it. And holy crap, was this so god-awfully stupid. When he shoots the arrow, which is one of those, plastic arrows with the bright red tip, it plays Oliver's theme, and to make it even worse, we get a shot of the arrow flying through the air, and it looks like someone is holding the arrow up to the camera and walking slowly. Remember when last episode, when Stein died and it was the saddest thing to ever be on a TV within 600 feet of me? Well, now we have this. It would not have been so bad if they waited 4 or 5 episodes, but it's just 1 episode after he died. But it was not all bad. Everything with Jax in this episode was very well done. The scenes between Jax and the younger Stein were all so good. It's just a shame they're in the same episode as, well, everything else in the episode. And at the end, Jax leaves the team, which really sucks. Jax and Stein was my second and third favorite Legends. Now the only ones on the team that I really like is Sarah and Nate. So that sucks, but Jax got a really good exit, and the scenes with Sarah were also well done. And as for the stuff with the Vikings, there's not much to say. It was really weird seeing Damien Dark pretending to be Odin, His inclusion just felt unnecessary, but I did like the scene where Sarah says she's gonna take on Dark herself, and when he challenges him, he just says no and snaps her neck. I did not like the fact that it was a fake out, but it was funny, especially if you watch this episode after rewatching some episodes in Arrow Season 4. And speaking of Sarah, she gets a lot of screen time with Agent Sharp, and it's really obvious that they will get together. I really don't think Sarah needs a new love interest this season, and I'm not a big fan of Agent Sharp's character, but we'll have to see how that plays out. And also, Sarah seems surprised when Agent Sharp told her Rip was in jail. It's like, duh, what did you think was going to happen? But all of my problems can be forgiven because John freaking Constantine will be in the next episode. I cannot and probably will not be able to wait until January for the next episode. Anyway, it was not a very good episode, probably the worst this season, and I spent a long time talking about Legends, so time to talk about Arrow. This week's episode of Arrow is titled Irreconcilable Differences. In it, we see Oliver and Felicity's wedding reception after Felicity crashed Barry and Iris's wedding and ruined that moment for every Flash fan. During the reception, Oliver learns that someone on Team Arrow has betrayed him and will testify against him on his trial. And before I talk about all of that, let me just say how bad the beginning of this episode, every second of it felt like the writers were just saying, screw you, screw you, screw you, screw you, repeatedly. And also, please, 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 as a Christmas gift to all of us Arrow fans, as a community's one wish, let Donna Smoke die in a horrible way. We will all be in your debt. Anyway, the person who betrayed Oliver was so obvious I called it as soon as it was first mentioned, and it was Renee. Was anybody shocked by this? And he was kicked off Team Arrow, and I'm glad Oliver did not cave in on this one. Well, at least in this episode. He may come back to the team later, and he probably will, but I hope he does not. Because I really have not liked his character this season, and also Curtis and Dinah leaves, and once again, good riddance. I much prefer Team Arrow to be a smaller team, but as I said, I think they will come back later. And speaking of Dinah, we see more of her in the Vigilante, and it is still awful. I did not get a chance to talk about it when it's first introduced, but it is so stupid. Vigilante was such a missed opportunity. We also see more stuff of Black Siren and Quentin, and it was okay, not bad. Looks like the Black Siren will become a good guy, which is something I do not want to see happen, but eh. And we learn that Caden James is working with the Vigilante, that guy who was selling Diggle the drugs, and Anatoly and some other guy's name I forget. We will have to see how that plays out, but I don't like any of the villains we've had this season, except Black Siren, and I really wish he could have been the main villain. But no, we have Adrian, James, Vince, I'm the worst plot twist of all time, and Count Vertigo 2.0. And Anatoly. I like Anatoly. I'll give him a pass. So far, screw this season. Season 5 was so good and righted all the wrongs of Season 4 and the not as bad Season 3, but it just looks like they're going to throw everything they worked so hard for in Season 5 down the drain. So yeah, I didn't like this episode. So now I'll rank the episodes of this week of the Arrowverse. And easily my favorite this week was The Flash. DeVoe is such a great villain, and I'm dying to see the Trial of the Flash storyline in live action, even if the setup is a little bit different. Well, very different. My second favorite episode this week was Supergirl. Even though I don't like the direction they're taking Mon-El and Rain, I still think this was a good episode. Coming in third place is going to be Legends of Tomorrow. This episode pissed me off in so many ways, but the scene with Jackson Stein was so good, and even though John Constantine will be in the next episode, I can't forgive this one's flaws. And in last place is Arrow. I hated it. Anyway, that'll do it for the mid-season finales of the year. I can't wait till they come back, and even though this video was much longer than I wanted it to be, there are some things I have to say before the end. First of all, when all the shows come back, they're changing Legends and Supergirl schedules. It sounds so stupid and confusing, so we'll have to see how that plays out. Also, when the shows come back, I may review them one at a time just to keep things more organized, and say from a year from now, the next seasons of our shows are going, the titling will be really confusing and unappealing, so I'll change it up, but I have a month to decide. Until then, I have a few Arrowverse videos planned during the break, with the first one being top 5 Arrow seasons, so I'll get to talk about Season 4 of Arrow in a full video, so I will probably do that a week or two from now. It's already basically done. I just gotta finish editing it. And I may do 1 or 2 videos about The Flash. No stuff for Legends or Supergirl, just not yet. So I'd like to thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.